Hi, my name is Someday, and I'm going to be posting today's video. Since I'm posting this video in place of Thursday, I'm going to try to use analogies that are more awkward and contrived than the dialogue portion on Jeopardy! The question we're going to be looking at today is how do people remember things? What we'll be looking at is essentially what is the differentiating factor between information that is stored indefinitely in our minds and information that is discarded almost immediately. Now, psychologists break down memory into three basic groups. There's long-term memory, short-term memory, and echoic memory. And when echoic memory is dealing with images, it's known as iconic memory. So now let's take a moment to look at these three different stages of memory, starting with the shortest time-wise and going on to the longest. The shortest is that of echoic memory. Now, as its name suggests, echoic memory is a lot like an echo. After you initially hear something, you can still remember it practically verbatim a few seconds afterward. Now, we can understand this better by looking at the analogy of a pie. After you eat a pie, you may not necessarily pay attention to what type of pie you're eating. So after you've swallowed, you still have that aftertaste in your mouth that can let you know what type of pie you ate. That aftertaste that you have for a few seconds is like the echoic memory that we have for a few seconds after hearing something. However, this does not last very long at all. Now, while virtually everything we hear enters into our echoic memory, only a very small percentage of it makes it into what's known as our short-term memory. Now, while there's no time frame set up specifically for how long short-term memory lasts, the general rule for it is if you remember it for the rest of the day, but most likely not remember it in a year from now, then it's most likely short-term memory. Now, short-term memory can include anything from items to pick up at the grocery store to-do lists, or even the name of the person you were recently introduced to. It's helpful to think of short-term memory like a waiting room. When you're stuck in a waiting room, you know you might be there for a couple hours, then eventually you'll see the doctor or dentist or whoever, and then you can be on your way and it's done with. Likewise, short-term memory is memories that are forced to stay around for a little while, but have a specific purpose and generally don't come back once that purpose is fulfilled. Now, we've seen only a small percentage of information makes it from our echoic memory into our short-term memory, and likewise, a very small percentage of the information from our short-term memory makes it into what's known as our long-term memory. If our short-term memory was a waiting room, then our long-term memory is essentially a warehouse. It's information that's here to stay, most likely for the rest of your life. Some common examples of long-term memories are your birthday, the names of close friends and family members, all these different things that you remember, things that we refer to as our memories. This is really the heart of what a long-term memory is. Now, the question that strikes me is with all this information entering our head, virtually everything we hear and see enters our memory for a short period of time. Why can such a small fraction of it actually last with us for the long term? Essentially, why do we remember things? After a lot of studying, I found that the reason why we actually remember things is because of significance. Essentially, if something is significant, we will remember it. If we consider it to be insignificant, we are much less likely to remember it. In psychology, there's a beautiful paradox known as the Baker-Baker paradox, which illustrates this fantastically. Now, what the Baker-Baker paradox states is that it's easier to remember that someone is a baker than it is to remember that their last name is Baker. Studies have been done to show this, and the ultimate implication of it is that it's easier to remember something when there's a connotation. If someone's last name is Baker, so what? It doesn't matter to you. However, if someone is a baker, you can attach a connotation to that and ultimately a significance. You might be jealous that they get to work with food all the time, or you might pity them for the fact that bakers are known for waking up notoriously early. Regardless of how you look at it, knowing someone is a baker has a connotation which can ultimately give it some significance. So what can we take from all of this? We asked the initial question, how do people remember things? We saw that the answer is through significance. Thus, our brains are actually programmed to discard information that was most likely useless and to remember information that is most likely important. If you think about all of the information that goes through your mind every day, reading the ingredient list in the box of cereal, conversations you have that are about practically nothing, all this information is sorted through our brain, and our brain is programmed to select the information that really matters and to discard the rest of the matter. I find that sorting process to be absolutely phenomenal. how do people remember things? It is through significance. And that is why our minds are actually useful and not filled with garbage, because we remember through significance.